Hi everyone, I'm Ebony Tara Scurry, the Career Architect, and you are watching Careercraft. I help people earn more money and have more freedom with a successful career by their own standards. From resumes to career exploration, I solve job problems that keep people awake at night. All right, so for the very second episode of Careercraft, we're going to start out with some workplace wisdom. Now, through my private practice, I see a lot of different scenarios for my clients in terms of the sometimes really weird things that they're dealing with as they're trying to find a job or work on their resume or secure references or whatever the case may be. And this past month, one of the most interesting things that came to my attention was this, and I want to share it with you. I've seen it before, but I don't see it that often, and I haven't seen it in a while. And so the fact that it came up, I thought it's something that we need to talk about. So, one of my clients, we were working on her resume, and she said that, she was, I was asking her what were some of the accomplishments she achieved, did she supervise anyone, things like that. And I said, wow, you did you did some really cool things at this particular position. And I asked her if she was using this particular employer as a reference. She said yes, and I said great. She said, but there's one thing. She said in the position that she was in, she supervised other people. She was working on some high-level projects. She was doing all these things that were not in her job description. They weren't. However, her employer, her supervisor, directed her to do these specific things that were not in her job description. Now, being a person of a strong work ethic, someone who was a go-to kind of person, taking initiative, they didn't shy away from the challenge, and they didn't care so much that it wasn't in their job description. They were a great employee. They wanted to do everything that they could to stretch themselves and to be of value to the employer. But you know what? At the end of the day, when this client of mine, she went to the employer and said, hey, I would love to use you for a reference because the fact that I supervised people and did all these things, that's great. The employer said, oh, hold on a second. I know that you did these great things. I know that you were supervising other people. I know that I had you be the lead on these projects and to do this and to do that. However, do you know that wasn't in your job description? Okay, and so I'm not going to say that you did those things because they were not in your job description. I have no problem with sharing a reference about you in terms of those things that were within your scope to do. Those other kind of extra things you did that are nice, I don't feel comfortable talking about them because they weren't in your job description, so that's that. Can you imagine just the words can't even describe how my client felt when she heard that. I mean, she worked herself so hard for these people, and for them to say something like that to her, for them to take the work that she did and just pretend that she didn't do it, she couldn't understand why they were doing this to her. At the end of the day, I told her, she actually ended up having some other references that she could use. And on her resume, I told her, you know what? If you did those things, you should still put them on your resume. Now, whether or not that employer verifies that or not, you can use other references. But when you're in the interview and if you're asked about these specific things that you're saying, give the examples of the things that you did. You don't necessarily have to have the employer to verify that if you did them. You're just being honest within yourself, okay? But here's the thing that I want to emphasize for you all out there. If you ever do things that are not within your job description, and I'm not just talking about the other duties assigned kind of things, I'm talking about things that are really outside of your job description. Like if you're supervising people, if you're doing performance appraisals, if you're, working with certain kind of people that are a few levels above you that are not in your description, if you're doing some significant things outside of your job description, those are things that you want to document You want to have an email to your employer or supervisor saying, hey, this is great that I'm doing these things, blah, blah, blah. Just some kind of documentation that shows you are doing them. You don't have to be overt and obvious about it, but you just want to capture that documentation, all right? Because you never know if you're going to be in the kind of situation that my client found herself in. Why in the world would the employer not want to be honest about the kind of work that their employee was doing, even though it was outside of her job description? Why? What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is this. If you have people doing work that's outside of their job responsibilities, significantly so, we're talking about far beyond the other duties assigned, an employer is obligated by law to pay their employees to compensate them for the work that they've done, okay? Now, when you get into the cases of having your employees do work that's outside of their description in a significant way, then that employer can be charged with misclassification of their job. You can have someone who's actually a manager, but their title is dishwasher, and you're paying them at the dishwasher rate, giving them dishwasher benefits, but you're having them do higher level work. That's a problem. And that employer can get in some really big trouble for that. They can be sued and other things if they admit to that. Very similar if someone is working as an independent contractor, but that employer is actually treating that independent contractor like an employee, supervising their work, telling them exactly how to do their work, telling them when they need to be on site, and what they have to do, and just providing, and maybe paying them hourly instead of by project and instead of based on result, just treating them more like an employee versus an independent contractor, because the employer wants the benefits of having an independent contractor without the responsibilities. That's illegal. So that employer was smart enough to know that if they admitted that they have this person doing more things than they should have been, that they could be held liable for that and maybe owe them wages for the position that she actually had. So, but they were still not smart enough that that's just not something they should do. They are still putting themselves at risk by doing that. Just something to be aware of. Okay? And if you're in that position, again, document. And be careful. If someone is taking advantage of you, maybe you don't want to work there anyway. All right, so we have a couple questions from Facebook. And we're going to start with Joyce. She's from Washington, D.C., and she writes in to Careercraft. She says, Miss Scurry, I have an interview for an entry-level drafting position in Phoenix next week. I'm concerned about age discrimination. Therefore, I want to dress younger, but still appropriate. This is a male-dominated field. Any suggestions on what to wear? It's an international civil engineering company. Well, Joyce, number one, whenever you interview, you want to be yourself as much as you can. Okay? You don't want to pretend to be something you're not. Except if you're feeling kind of nervous, you want to pretend to be a bit more relaxed and confident than you are. Besides that, I would not suggest that you dress younger. Because you know what? If you go to the interview dressing younger, then when you get the job, you're going to need to keep up with that kind of pretend persona that you came there with, and you're going to need to get a whole nother wardrobe of you having younger stuff. Don't pretend. Be who you are. You don't want to compete with what you think they want, okay? And you think they may want younger, that may not be what they want. They found you, they're requesting an interview from you, they already like what they see. So continue with that. Be yourself, okay? And even though you're concerned about age discrimination, it's a male-dominated field, just be who you are, be yourself. And come there with the best that you've got, okay? You have other experience than some of these other younger people, okay? So leverage that past experience that you have. Find a way to make it transferable to the position that you're getting. That way, you will have some added benefit from those other people. So again, don't dress younger, dress professional, be confident, be yourself. And while we're on this topic, there's a really interesting website that I'd like for you to check out. It's called workforce50.com. So www.workforce50.com. It's a website that deals with a lot of tips and great things for people who are 50 and over. Now you may not be quite, 50 or over. You may be in your 40s, I don't know, but something worth checking out for you. Also, in terms of age discrimination, the law protects people who are 40 years old and older. So those of you out there who are under 40, you can be discriminated against because of your age all day long. That's just the way the law is. So keep that in mind. Good luck to you, Joyce, and good luck for your interview. I wish you the best, and let us know how that goes. Our next question comes from October, and she's from Wardroff, Maryland. She's in nursing. She says, what do you do when every reference you have has moved on to a new job or died? Good question. Now, the key to securing references is to get it from people before they move or before they die. Ideally, when you're in a position, you want to secure a reference for that position before you go to a next one. Or if you've gone to a next one, secure it for that previous one as soon as you can, while things are still fresh in those people's minds. You don't want to ask for a reference months or years after you've worked there, because it may be a little harder for them to remember certain things about you. Okay? When you ask for a reference, yes, people change jobs all the time. We change jobs more than we have in the past few years. Now, it used to be people would stay at a job for 30 years. Now that's not the case. So yes, people will move and people will die. When you ask for references, be sure to get not just their work email address and contact information, but ask them for their personal information as well, their personal email address, their personal cell phone. Better yet, friend them on LinkedIn, linkedin.com, which, if you're not familiar, is a professional social networking site. It's kind of like Facebook, except it's specifically for the professional arena. Find your supervisor or find whoever that reference is on there. That way, regardless of what position they have, you will be able to contact them. Now, if they die, even though you know how to contact them, it doesn't matter because they've passed on. That's why I strongly recommend, and I love reference letters. Reference letters, they're fantastic. What you do is, whoever you want to write you a reference letter, ask them. Offer to draft it for them, give it to them, let them tweak it, send it to them via email, put it on company letterhead, sign it, and call it a day. That means whether or not they're here, there, or dead, or wherever, you have a reference letter that shows exactly what you did. And regardless of if someone is having a good day or not, that letter still says the wonderful things about you. Because when you have references that people have to call, that person could be having a bad day. They could just forget who you are. So it's just, some people just aren't as articulate as they want to be. But a letter always says things in a great way. That's why I love reference letters. Our next question is from Nancy, and she's from Panama. And she sent us this wonderful video, which we'll watch.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I was born in Peru, South America, and I have a question. What do you do when all your education is in another country that is not here in America? I went to high school, I have 3 years and a half of college, and how do I add that on my resume? What are the steps to follow to put it on my resume?
All right, Nancy. So now that we've seen your video question, and thank you so much for sending that in to us, to the show, you basically want to know how can you get your degrees and all that to mean anything here in the United States when all of your education, for the most part, was in Panama? Well, It's pretty simple. And this is the case for a lot of students who are coming to the United States from another school. You go through the same process. What you want to do is you want to get your transcripts translated and notarized. And the way you do this is there's a number of companies out there who will do this for you. There's two in particular that are particularly credible and that I like to recommend. One is called World Education Services, and you can find them at www.wes.org. And the second service is called International Education Evaluations, Inc. Okay? And you send them your transcript that has your degrees and all that stuff. So you have your university, send it to this company. The company will transcribe it into English. They will look at what your GPA is and your credits, and they will connect that to the way that we do things in the United States so that they translate in terms of not just the language, but in what the different credits mean. Because in some countries, one credit could be 2 here, and so on. So it'll cost a little money, but it's not too expensive. They're very reasonable. And a couple things about that. Let's say some of these organizations, or let's say in the instance that you're talking about, you have an employer who wants to verify your education. Whether it's an employer or a school who want to verify your education, many times they will want the translating service to give them that translation directly. So that means having the service send it directly to the employer or directly to the school. Another thing, if you have the service send it directly to you, they will send it to you in an envelope. Do not open that envelope. Keep it sealed. That way, if you give that envelope to the employer, they know that it's valid because it has not been opened or tampered with. Another thing, any school transcripts. Always keep an unopened copy of your transcript ready, because you never know when that great job will come and they may require your transcripts, official transcripts. And that's really the difference between official transcripts and unofficial transcripts, is that official transcripts are in the envelope sealed, whereas unofficial are unsealed, or they're what you've downloaded from the computer just by going up and looking at your records from a computer or something like that. So always have a sealed copy of your educational credentials. That way, if you ever don't have the time for the organization to send it to where you're trying to get it to, an employer or another school, you will always have a valid copy with you. It's just a good best practice to have it just in case, because you always want to be ready when that wonderful job comes about. The next section of the show is called How is my document doing? And this is where we take a look at someone's resume, cover letter, reference page, or whatever the document is. We take a look and see how is it doing. So for this episode, we have DJ. And DJ is from Maryland, and he is a student. He's studying something called CAD, which is computer-aided design. And he has a resume that's a digital electronic resume that's in this kind of cool format, and you may see it on the screen here. Now the first thing I see is his full name. That's great. He has his number, and then he has a website. I love that he has a website. That's fantastic. Now, what's even better than a website is having a good website. So if you're going to list your professional website on your resume, make sure it's of high quality. Don't put up your resume link and your resume is all ghetto and doesn't do anything for you. So make sure that it's a good website. Now, any other resume, you want to have your actual mailing address. This does not have a mailing address on it. So DJ would want to put his mailing address on here as well as an email address. There's no email on this resume. Just because it's digital, it should still have an email on it. Objective. Seeking to obtain a position that will allow me to make use of my skills in graphic design and visual communications in order to successfully contribute to a reputable organization and assist in creating visual marketing material. I don't like this objective on the surface because the first sentence talks about what he wants to do for himself. When you have an objective, your objective should be to help whatever organization you're applying to do what they want to do. Who cares what you want to do? You're trying to get a job with them. Tell them how you're going to help them do what they want to do. Okay? He's talking about what he wants. And then near the end, he talks that he wants to contribute to a reputable organization. It's so generic, so he's not specifically listing an organization. So even though this is digital, he would still want to tweak this for any place he's applying to. What I like to do is find the mission statement of the organization that you're applying to and find a way to weave it into your objective so that your objective is to help them achieve their mission of X, Y, and Z. Skill set, Adobe, PSID, all of those are abbreviations. Perhaps someone in his industry would know exactly what they mean. Normally, you don't want to use abbreviations. You want to spell it out. But for his kind of field, that may work, depending on who's reviewing his resume first. If it's an HR person, they may not know exactly what those specific abbreviations are, so it may be helpful for him to write it out. He says Bachelor of Graphic Design. Graphic design should be capitalized, the G and the D. Under experience, this is where there's a lot of room for improvement on this digital resume. Now, one thing with this kind of resume is, it has this picture on it. He's showcasing some of his graphic design skill, but it's at the cost of the quality of the content, and that's a big no-no. So, experience, freelance artist, that doesn't tell me that much. Who were some of your customers? What exactly were you doing? What kind of projects did you work with other people on? So you really want to flesh that out more meaningful information. So think about the results. What did you accomplish? Just throwing out this kind of random information doesn't really add a lot of meaningful value. So really think about some specific things, some specific bullets you can add under experience and community involvement. And as a matter of fact, your experience section and the community involvement section don't even need to be separate. Meld them together and then pick out maybe 3 to 6 bullets of things, and you have enough space there when you meld them together. Maybe 3 to 6 bullets, and think about results, actions you took, things you accomplished, and that's the way you're going to want to craft some meaningful information. And try to add some quantitative data in there just to add some weight to the things that you've done. Have you won any awards? Things like that. Okay? But I like it. I think it's pretty cool. I like the way it looks. Just focus more on your actual content, and that will help a lot. All right, our next question comes from Heather. And Heather says, Ebony, hope you and your family are doing well. I have a question about references etiquette. I had an interview yesterday for a position as an executive assistant, although the man I would ultimately be assisting travels a great deal and will not be home to meet me until January. In the meantime, the other staff is trying to do some preliminary interviews and whatnot. They want to call my references, and they specifically asked me to provide contact information from my last job, the one I was laid off from. I'm pretty nervous about contacting those people and asking for a reference. I'm afraid they will say terrible things about me. What is the etiquette of this situation? If a place asks specifically for a reference from the last job you were at, it doesn't always have to be a supervisor, okay? It could be a colleague. Ideally, it should be a supervisor, but it can be a colleague if you're worried that the supervisor may say terrible things. Now, if you think everybody is going to say terrible things about you, the colleague, the supervisor, whoever, then It's better not to provide any reference than to provide a reference that you feel is going to say something really bad. Now, at the end of the day, you don't know for sure if someone's going to give you a bad reference or not in your case. The thing is, trust your gut, and I think that you should trust your gut. So if your gut is telling you these people are going to say terrible things about me, then go with that. Now, for the job, for the employer that's asking you for these references, tell them, I understand that you would like references from the last position I had. However, I'm unable to provide you references from that position. And say, just say, unfortunately, I'm unable to provide references from that position. However, I do have references from X, Y, Z, A, B, and C, and whatever. And provide the references that you do have, okay? If they ask you why you can't provide references, you can tell them, be honest with them about the fact that you were laid off. You know, you can tell them, you know what, I was laid off from that position, and I really don't think there's anyone there that can really share with you honestly about the kind of work that I did there, okay? If you feel that the work that you did at that place was great work and you don't think they're gonna say that, then what you're saying is true. You don't feel there's anyone there who can really share or give a reference about the kind of work that you did, and you were laid off there, okay? But don't offer an explanation unless they ask for one. And when you're saying no about one thing, say yes about something else. Provide them some other references, reference letters as well, okay? But again, it's better to provide no reference than a bad one, okay? Now, at the end of the day, if they say, well, if we can't get a reference from this past job, then that's it, well, then maybe it's just time to find some other places to apply. In terms of final thoughts, we had a lot of different questions, a couple of them about references. We had a question about the digital resume and age discrimination, as well as how do we translate education from one country, Panama, to another, the United States. And those are all very interesting things, and I'm really glad we had a chance to talk about it together this month. One thing that I want to kind of focus on in terms of a final thought is this. Joyce asked us about wanting to dress younger and worried about age discrimination. And that just, I keep thinking about that because I really want you to be yourself. Sometimes you just can't go wrong with being yourself, but you can always go wrong with trying to be someone you're not. It's hard to keep it up, and at the end of the day, eventually the natural you will just come out. So accept yourself, be who you are. Don't try to compete with what you think someone else is doing. Compete with yourself. Do better for yourself, okay? And when it comes to applying for jobs and interviewing, just let your own passion for what you're doing come out as much as it can. And, you know, I have clients who have piercings and tattoos and all that kind of stuff. We know that, right? If you go to interview, you may be worried about what someone thinks about that. You may want to cover up your tattoo and what have you, and that's fine if you want to cover it up. But you know what? If you go to the interview and you take out your nose ring, then you go to work and you put it in, they may be like, where did this come from? And that may be a problem. But if you go to the interview with your nose ring and you come to work with the nose ring, it's not going to be a big deal because you showed them already what you're about, and you know, it's not going to be a surprise to them. So come to the interview how you intend to present yourself in the workplace, okay? You can still be professional. Just because you have a nose ring doesn't mean you come to the interview wearing jeans and boots. Still be professional, just have your nose ring or whatever. I remember way back in the day, I had an eyebrow ring and I interviewed for a federal job and I got it. And as long as you're on point with everything and your qualifications and your resume and your cover letter and all this stuff, even if they don't like a piercing or what have you, it may be a small thing when weighed against all the other awesome stuff you're bringing to the table, okay? So be yourself. And sometimes you just don't want to worry about what you think other people may be thinking about you, okay? You can't control what they think about. If they want to discriminate against someone for some reason, they're going to do that. There may be another or a better job out there for you. You may have 20 piercings, but are you comfortable just coming to work with maybe 5 of them? Have some kind of middle ground and slowly add a piercing in there, as time goes along if you want, or as you're able to showcase your value for the work that you bring so that people see your value and then they may not see those other things so much, okay? So be yourself. Be yourself. Now that we're at the end of the show, I'm going to leave you with this. You deserve to achieve your destiny. Give yourself a chance. Invest in yourself. See you next time.
Mann, der Tat, Schilden in der Tank und er liebte alle Frauen. Jede rief, komm und mach mir Amadeus, hatte wieder Blut im Arm.